Okay, moving on. This will be Module 3, the second half of the chapter, where we're going to learn how to set tabs and insert section breaks so that we can have different headers and footers within our document. So we're continuing on with the wireless file, which was in the first session that we worked through. And what I want you to do, I'm going to point this out to you quickly since I have it open here. In your Mind tab, session 3, if you have a book, it's on page 3-32, 3-32, I should say. In Mind tab, it talks about, once this page finally comes up, talks about your tab stops and how, what all these tabs mean. Your tab stop is over here on the left, and I'll show you this a second when we get back into Word. But if you set a left tab, it's going to left align it. If you set a center tab, it's going to center align it. A right tab is going to right align. A decimal tab is going to align it by decimals. A bar tab, which is kind of funny, a bar tab is going to put in these lines. So whenever you see a big long vertical line like this, they've used a bar tab to create that. So again, this is in your ebook. It's probably a good thing to use. We just scratched the surface on tabs in this class. And they even talk about dot leaders, where you get the little dots between the tabs. You don't type those in yourself. You have a tab do that for you. But we don't actually practice that in this level of Word. So just so you know, this kind of covers it more in depth here in your ebook. But just to show you within Word, this is the button they're talking about. So if I have this little, if I hover my mouse over this little square in the upper left-hand corner, notice it shows left tab. And if I would go and set a tab on my ruler right now, it's going to be a left tab. If I switch this, it'll move to a center tab. If I click it again, it moves to a right tab. Click it again, decimal, it has that little dot in there. That is a bar tab, where it gives you that line, that vertical line. And then it goes through our first line indent and so on. And then it cycles back through to the left tab. So we're going to use this in a second, but before we do that, we're going to type in some additional information here. So under Help from Norris Blaine Network Counseling or Consulting, I'm going to click after Cade Blake, and I'm going to hit the Tab key. It's an important thing to note as I just hit the Tab key. I have to do that if I want to go back and use my tabs later. So some people will set up the tabs and then type, or you can type and then set up the tabs. If you're going to type and then set up the tabs, you just want to make sure you hit the Tab key. Otherwise, what we're going to do later isn't going to work. So I hit the Tab key here, and I can turn on my non-printing arrow so you can see that. That little arrow right there represents being the Tab key being hit. Okay, then I'm going to just type in senior consultant. Oops, my caps lock turned on. Oh, goodness. Enter. I'm going to type in the next name, Samuel. This is not going to be a long list, so don't worry. Iglesias. It's a fun name to say. Again, senior consultant. And finally, Beverly Sheffield -McCoy. Sheffields and McCoys, aren't those? It's not like a show where families fought or something like that. Sounds like it. Project manager then. And again, I hit the Tab key between each one. So we could certainly hit the Tab key again to get these to line up, but it would look much nicer if senior consultant, and project manager all lined up together. So we're going to do that by setting a tab. So I'm going to select these three. And before I set my tab, I'm going to set my tab first. So with these three selected, I can now set a left tab. So here's my left tab marker chosen over here. And now I'm going to come to the 2.5 inch mark on my ruler and left click. It's going to set that left tab. You can always move your tab. You have to be a little careful. I have to click back on my tab again, and I can move it to be wherever I want on the ruler. The one thing you don't want to do is drag it off the ruler, because then your tab goes away. But then I could reset it again if I want to. If it lets me, there we go. And again, they wanted at the 2.5 inch mark, so I'm just going to back this up a little bit. Again, the only reason why it worked for me to do it that way is because I hit the Tab key in the middle here. If I just would have typed in Cade Blake and hit the space bar in senior consultant, this hitting the Tab key or putting in a tab right now would not work. So you have to have those Tab keys in if you plan to set your tab after the fact. Okay. Next, we need to remove, we want to make this single space. So again, to do that, we would just select the first two lines and we would remove the after paragraph spacing. So remove space after paragraph. That'll just remove the spacing after for these top two. If I would have selected this line as well, it would have removed the spacing after this, and then the two would have butted up against this paragraph, which would have looked weird. So you want to make sure you just do it for the first two lines there. Okay, the other thing they talk about in this section is hyphenation. So notice how this paragraph in particular is really jagged and looks weird. It's because throughout doesn't fit up here. Other things that might fit don't fit, warehouse and so on. So just with my cursor in this paragraph somewhere, I'm going to go to the Layout tab, choose Hyphenation, and choose Automatic. And notice it adjusts that paragraph now throughout is hyphenated. It moved everything else on this line to where warehouse is now up here. Networking is then hyphenated, so it helps to, adjust information so that it doesn't look so blank over here. So you can use hyphenation to do that. All right, we're going to move to the end of our document. Here you can hit Control End, E-N-D, or you can scroll and click at the end here. And then we're going to insert a page break. But instead of a regular page break, we're going to insert what's called a section break next page. It starts a new section on the next page. Now looking at this, you wouldn't notice that it really looks any different, but if I go to my Home tab and I click on the non-printing, the formatting marks, you can see it says section break next page, different from page break. And the reason it is now is it's going to allow us to treat this section of our document differently than the rest of our document. The reason we want to do that is we want to make this page landscape and we want everything else to stay the same. So the only way we can do that is by inserting a section break. It's going to treat this section of our document different than this section. So I'm going to now, with my cursor down here, I'm going to go to the Layout tab and I'm going to choose Orientation and choose Landscape. And it'll change this last page of my document here to be landscaped, and the rest of my document above that is still portrait orientation. So section breaks allow you to do that, and this is just one example of how I can use a section break. We're going to show you headers and footers here in a minute as well. So what we want to do here now on this page is we want to insert some Smart Art. So we're going to go to the Insert tab and go to Smart Art. And we're going to go to, you can see all the different Smart Art types here. We're going to go to Relationship. And then we're going to scroll down till we get to this Converging Radial. I click on it here, I see it over here. Click OK. And Smart Art is usually pretty easy to use, but sometimes it can be a little weird. So if it starts to be too weird for you, you can always try to delete it and start over again. But the one thing I tend to find that works the best for me is to use what's called this text pane. It did not show up for me when I first opened my Smart Art or brought it up. So I'm going to click on text pane here to bring this up. I can close it out, I can bring it back, and it kind of works as like a toggle switch. So in the first box here, we're going to type in better connectivity, and you can see it adjusts the size to make it fit. Then I can click in the next box and type in hardware, oops, except I need to spell that right, hardware upgrades. And in the next box, I'm going to type in wireless survey. Actually, it's wireless site survey, but I'm just going to go with survey. And this box I don't need, so I'm going to click on it. I actually end up clicking on it twice so I can see the handles around it. Then I'm going to hit my delete key. And notice how the Smart Art adjusts for me then. It reconfigures it basically. I don't need this text pane anymore, so I can turn it off up here. Then I want to adjust the size of my Smart Art. Now you can do this a couple different ways. You can grab the handle here and drag. Now of course the book tells us to make an exact size, so I'm going to go to my Format tab here. It wants the height to be 6.5. I almost got that right. And the width to be 9. Again, almost perfect there. But please note how to do it here. I hate for Sam or Cengage to mark it off for you because you drag the handles. I mean, in real life, we would drag handles and make it look the size we want it to be versus typing it specifically probably into a window like that. But just so you know, that's how you can change the height and the width. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click, so we're going to scroll up to the bottom of our first page here. So page number 1, and right now I'm going to turn off these formatting marks because they drive me crazy. I'm going to get into my footer of my document. So I can do this a couple different ways. I can go to insert and I can go to footer, but I really just want to get into my footer. So I'm just going to double click here at the bottom of my document, and it takes me into the footer. And it automatically takes me to the left side of my footer. And I'm going to type in my first name and last name here, hit enter. And now I want to insert a page number. And we talked about this last module as well. Whenever you're inserting a page number, you would use the insert option right here, page number. You would not type it in yourself. They're having us choose, I'm going to go to current position, which means it's going to put it wherever my cursor currently is. And I'm going to choose the accent bar 2. See, it says page 1. Down here, it also says page 2 and then page 3. If I would have typed in page 1 myself, these all would say page 1, and I don't want them all to say page 1. So that's why I'm choosing the page number instead of typing it in myself. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is notice now that we put in that page, the section break next page, notice that now we can see our different sections here. The first 3 pages are in section 1. The last page is in section 2. So now this allows me to treat this page differently. Notice the same as previous is turned on in both of these areas. If you want your header and footer to be the same as the other sections, you would leave same as previous turned on. If you want it to be different, you would turn that off. So I'm going to go into my header for section 2. I'm going to turn off link to previous. So just notice here it says same as previous. When I turn off link to previous, that same as previous goes away. And now I'm going to go up into my header. In this section, I'm going to add a header. And to do that, I'm going to make sure my cursor is blinking in here. I'm going to go to my header option, and I'm going to choose grid. And it's going to insert this header for me. So for the document title here, we're going to type in, what are we going to type in? Recommendations for wireless, for the wireless. Oh my goodness, this is the end of the day, and I clearly can't even type. I'm just going to not type everything. Recommendations for the wireless network. And then I can go to the date and choose, I'm just going to choose today. Put in today's date there. Note now, if I scroll up, my header is on every page in my section 1. But if I go to my last section here, section 2, there is no header because I turned off that link to previous. Now, the other thing I just want to point out as we're working through this, note that our footer is linked, and therefore my footer is in there because it is linked. Now, I could choose to take my footer out of this page. In order to do that, I would have to turn off. If I took my footer out of this page now, it would take it out of every page. But if I turn off link to previous, I can take it out of this page with the delete key, and it's still up here. So that linking to previous, same as previous, is what you want to look for when you have those section breaks and you want your header and footer to be different. That's what you're looking for there. Okay, the last thing we're going to do here, so I'm going to get out of my header and footer. I can close header and footer here. I could also double click in my document and that would take it out as well. We're going to insert a cover page. So to do that, we're going to go to the Insert tab, choose Cover Page, and again, we're going to go with the Grid option. Notice because of what we just typed in the header, it picked up that same name. Now I don't want this to be hyphenated. You can fix that a couple different ways, but one way to do that is to go to your Layout tab, and under hyphenation, we can go to hyphenation options, and we can tell it to not hyphenate words that are all caps. And when I click OK, it'll fix that for me. It looks weird to have a title hyphenated, so that's why we're changing that. You can add information into the subtitle by just clicking on this. I can type in prepared by, it tells us to put in Ebony Wheatley. And then anything you're not going to use, like in this case here, and this is the same thing for the header. If you insert something into your document and you're not going to use any part of it, Get rid of it. It looks weird to have this here if you're not putting real text in there. So I'm going to right click on this and tell it to remove the content control. You can also hit delete quite a few times. It'll get rid of it that way as well. Okay, the last thing I just want to talk about in this section are themes. If I go to the Design tab, just notice this theme has specific fonts that are being used. So if I hover over fonts here, it tells me it's the Calibri Light font, and I can see the color set. But if I change to the grid theme, I'm going to go to themes here. Nope, we're not choosing grid, we're choosing facet, I guess is how you'd say that. Notice it changes the color, and if I scroll through, I can see it changes the color through all my titles. It changed the color for my table, and it changed the color for my smart art as well. So it changes my colors. It also changes my fonts. If I hover over this fonts now, you can see it's this, I'm not sure how to pronounce that font, but you can see it's a different font. And it obviously changed the colors, but anytime you want to change your font set or your colors, you can always change it to something different if you don't like the color set that's chosen. Sometimes it's nice to just go in and do something different because we're so used to seeing all the same color fonts all the time. But that's it. That's it for this section of the document. One last thing I should mention, just in case they mention this in the Cengage part, is this read mode. And I think actually when I first opened the document, you'll sometimes see documents open in this read mode. It just makes the text bigger, makes it easier to see and read. Maybe. I can't say that I necessarily like this view, but some people might. So read mode would allow you to see this in a different view. I think the nice thing about seeing it this way is that when you do open a document and you see this, you know that you can change it to print layout view, and then you see what we're used to seeing. Okay, that's it for Module 3. As always, you have the same learning plan information, and you're doing the SAM training. Just a reminder, the SAM training, you can do unlimited attempts over and over and over again. For the module project and the SAM project A, you have up to 2 attempts. Both of those attempts would need to be done before the due date, otherwise it'll count it late. And finally, the SAM exam here, you have 1 attempt. So just, for a lot of these, the training and these 2 here, you have the option to do it again. And I will let you know that, over the past week or so, I've gotten tons of emails about this marked it wrong and I don't think it should be wrong, and I'm happy to look at them. I actually reached out to other instructors because I was getting so many emails like that. And they did say that it does tend to still be something on your end. Like maybe you didn't read the direction exactly what it was. Like maybe they had you change the font color, but you changed the cell style instead, or vice versa. It tells you to change the cell style to something and then you choose something different. So just make sure you're following directions exactly. I was inundated within the last week with a lot of those emails, so I will look at them again and grant points where I feel points should be granted. The review Dropbox, again, remember, is the end of the project, the end of the module review, and you're uploading this into Blackboard. That's something I grade. It's not automatically graded, so I'll get to that as soon as I can. I do have all the Module 1 stuff graded. I'm going to start putting zeros in where students have not submitted it, so you can see how that affects your grade. Doesn't mean that I won't accept it still. I just want you to know that your grade is not current if I don't put those zeros in there. So just so that you understand that piece too. As always, reach out to me with any questions you may have.